Welcome to this explainer. Okay, imagine for a second you're a military commander. You've spent your entire career relying on what is universally considered the absolute benchmark of modern artillery. You feel secure, right? Secure in your strategy, your reach, your high-tech gear. But what happens when that confidence is completely shaken by something that literally crawled out of a history book? Today, we're diving into exactly that scenario. We're looking at how a highly secretive, kind of mysterious 1980s artillery piece from one of the most isolated nations on Earth is suddenly popping up in Russia and totally disrupting the modern battlefield.
So we really have to ask this crucial question. Is the West falling behind in the artillery war? I mean, for decades, Western military doctrine has felt rock solid, but this surprising new deployment in Russia has completely shifted the tactical landscape in a way almost nobody saw coming. When a piece of Cold War hardware forces today's top strategists to rethink their entire playbook, we absolutely have to pause and figure out what's going on. Let's break down exactly what is happening on the ground.
What we're looking at is a fundamental clash of military philosophies. In one corner, you have modern NATO precision. The NATO 155mm standard has been the undisputed gold standard for both range and accuracy for a long time. It's high-tech, it's sleek, it's all about pinpoint effectiveness. But in the other corner, raw 1980s power. It's a totally different beast, massive, old-school brute force that completely trades technological elegance for sheer, unrefined devastation.
Section 1. Meet the M1989 Koksan.
Let's meet the disruptor, the M1989 Koksan. It is a massive 170mm self-propelled howitzer. We actually call it the M1989 in the West for a very simple reason. 1989 is the year our intelligence agencies finally spotted it. And Koksan, well, that's just the name of the North Korean city where it was first seen. It's honestly fascinating how a weapon from the Hermit Kingdom, largely hidden away for decades, has suddenly thrust itself right into the center of modern military analysis.
Now, if you look at its design, it is a total blast from the past. Honestly, it's basically a Frankenstein's monster of a weapon. Our sources highlight that it's an upgrade of an older model, literally fusing a Chinese tank chassis with a Soviet artillery tractor. You definitely aren't going to find any modern sleekness or high-tech integrated systems rolling off an assembly line here. But hey, do not let that patched-together, old-school look fool you for a second. This machine was built to pack a very serious punch.
Section 2. The range advantage. In the world of artillery, range is literally everything. And this is where the Koksan really shakes things up. Standard NATO artillery usually operates right around the 30 to 40 kilometer mark. Now the Koksan, using standard conventional shells, hits targets at about 40 kilometers, which is roughly 25 miles. So it's already neck and neck. But when it utilizes rocket-assisted ammunition, its range jumps to a staggering 60 kilometers. That is 37 miles. It pushes the danger zone way past what most people expected, actively outranging a lot of its more modern Western counterparts. Section 3. Cracking fortified defenses.
You might be wondering, why on earth is Russia turning to an isolated nation like North Korea for this specific hardware right now? I mean, they have a massive military-industrial complex of their own, right? Well, the strategic value actually comes down to the math. Russia typically relies on 152mm shells for their standard Akatsiya guns. The Koksan, though, fires massive 170mm rounds. Even compared to the Peon, which is already a heavy-hitting Russian howitzer in their inventory, the Koksan gives them a longer range. It turns out, for these very specific, high-impact metrics, this imported North Korean tech is actually outperforming what the Russians had available.
The real game changer is exactly how those 170mm shells are being used. These larger, incredibly powerful rounds are being deployed specifically to crack open fortified defenses. We're talking about deeply entrenched defensive positions that standard Russian artillery was really struggling to break through. When pinpoint precision just isn't enough to dislodge an enemy, sheer explosive mass becomes absolutely priceless.
Section 4. The reality check.
Okay, let's pump the brakes for a second. Before we go crowning this thing an unstoppable superweapon, we need a reality check. Because North Korea is so notoriously secretive, our sources remind us that we have to take a lot of these technical specs with a massive pinch of salt. We only know what we can observe from the outside. We have no real idea how strong its armor actually is, and we know very little about its defensive capabilities or how well its crew is protected against modern battlefield threats like drones or counter-battery fire.
12. Yep, just 12. That is the absolute maximum number of rounds the Koksan can actually carry on board at any given time. For a weapon designed to lay down massive, sustained fire, maxing out at just 12 rounds internally is a huge operational flaw.
And, that low ammo capacity creates a severe logistical bottleneck. Because it only holds 12 rounds, the Koksan literally requires an entirely separate second vehicle to travel with it just to maintain sustained fire. In a modern war zone where mobility and speed are essentially the keys to survival, tying your heavy artillery down to a dedicated supply truck makes the whole unit a slower and much more visible target.
Section 5. Cold War Revitalized.
But here's the thing. Despite those glaring logistical drawbacks, the broader strategic implications here simply cannot be ignored. Intelligence estimates suggest that around 120 of these units have been deployed. This proves the Hermit Kingdom isn't just sitting on the sidelines anymore. They are actively using this conflict to pressure test their gear in a real-world environment. And at the same time, they're providing Russia with much-needed replacements for their worn-out equipment. It's a mutually beneficial deal that totally changes the dynamics of the conflict.
Our sources really hit the nail on the head when they describe this as a wild turn of events that feels like a revitalization of the Cold War. We aren't just seeing massive amounts of gear moving across borders. There are even reports of personnel moving between these two nations. This kind of exchange of hardware and human resources fundamentally shifts the geopolitical landscape. It literally brings a forgotten 1980s powerhouse right into the dead center of a 21st century conflict.
So, whether the Koksan is just a temporary band-aid for worn-out equipment or a genuine long-term threat to Western artillery dominance, one thing is absolutely certain. It has totally changed the math on the battlefield. I want to leave you with this final thought to ponder as we wrap up this explainer. Looking at all the data we've covered today, do you think advanced, modern NATO precision ultimately outweighs the raw, devastating range and power of something like the Koksan, or is the West genuinely at risk of falling behind in the artillery war? It's a massive question, and one strategists will be debating for a long, long time. Thanks for joining me, and keep questioning the world around you.